I titled the session, work-life balance, right? Or really are you trying to achieve a purpose and a calling, right? And I think helps to set everything very, very far apart, right? Because if you continue to always try to balance your work and your life from a time perspective, right, you always end up in a very tension environment, Am I too much time at work? Am I not spending enough time at work? Am I missing out at work, right? They all went for dinner together. I didn't go, then I didn't find out about this. Oh no, tomorrow I'm behind already, right? Am I going to miss this promotion cycle, right? Why my increment only 20%, the other people got 22%, right? So those kind of things keep playing in your head all the time, right? You're just trying to balance between your work and life. Lah. But I was thinking maybe we think a bit bigger, right? Let's think of career, work, and all that, more of achieving a purpose and a calling. And I'll show you three areas that has really taught me some key lessons, right? As I've gone through the last 21 years of work, right? So I always tell Rachel, so, hey, I'm a bit nearer towards retirement than when I first started work, right? Assuming I get to retire at 60. Lah. But actually, I'm going to tell you a nice Bible story later. The poor guy didn't manage to retire for 300 years. Okay. All right. So let's start. It's not on the slides, but I actually graduated together with Rachael, but I did a degree in computer and mathematical sciences back in 99. Unlike Rachael, if you did hear earlier, she took her time to come back and look for a job and all that. I put my hand up. I'm always the more worried one that there's not enough money and there's not enough time. So I was back in Malaysia by December. I was submitting resumes from my hometown in Segamat to companies in JB, in KL, in Singapore, that. And I've never heard of this thing called the Big Four or Big Five at that time. Okay, they came to our university to interview all these high achievers or that. I was a very, 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 very average. Some might even say below average student. Okay, so I never heard about the Big Four, but guess where I landed up as the first job? So I was in Ernst & Young, right? As Rachel said, sometimes it's just the timing, right? They need a lot of young auditors to come in before the peak period. So I was in by January 2000, right? My first job, I remember I came for the interview on the bus, right? Stayed over at my auntie's house. The next day, first time in my life, wear a tie, right? With I don't know what shirt I managed to find. So went for the interview. Probably didn't say anything wrong, right? And managed to get the job, right? And started, right? Immediately after that. So I went back home, packed all the bag, came back, right? And straight away into the job already and started work already. And it lasted a whole 1 year only because I was doing system audit, right? And I always had the deep feeling that, and everybody told me, how can you tell me what is wrong with me if you've never done it before? Right? Your audit, right? How do you know this finding is correct? How do you know? And there's always a deep feeling in me like, yeah, I don't know anything, right? How can I tell people anything? So I must do something, right? So I decided I will go all the way in and all the way deep, right? And an opportunity came up in Diamond Key International. They are a Shell subsidiary. Their focus is purely on engineering solutions, right? So we did electrical, mechanical, electronic, and systems engineering. We put all these things together for downstream automation on oil and gas. Okay, and then from here I went very, very into doing everything. So I was repairing pumps, I was installing valves, I was configuring for some of the engineers here all the SCADA systems, right? I was commissioning systems and it was such an adventure, and I spent 6 months in Melbourne, right, as part of the Australia team. Then they flew me back here, so then I spent about 4 to 5 months in Kuantan. I spent a few months in Singapore, so it was constant traveling, right? In Thailand, I was supporting Indonesia, and I was on call. I was a system support engineer, so I had to hold the phone, right, the support phone, until 2, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. There'll be calls coming in, right? And I was logging in and trying to solve the issues and backup system. So it was very, very tough during that time. But all work is tough lah, right? And I was learning lah. I was learning until an opportunity came up. One of my friends called me up to say that, hey, we've started a startup. Do you want to join us or not? Right? And I thought, I'm only 22, right? Might as well try lah, right? And at that time, at 22, so I couldn't buy life insurance already because I was doing dangerous work for oil and gas, and it was starting to affect my health. So I thought, okay, I'll go for it, right? And I became the startup's employee number 3. There were 4 bosses, so altogether there were 7 of us only in that company at that time. And yeah, from that time, we grew that company from 7. I was employee number 3 until we reached a peak of our own company to about 120 people. Then we acquired 3 or 4 other companies together, so we were close to about 200 plus headcount, right? So we grew that all the way until about 200 plus headcount. So you put a pin on this because later I'll come back and tell you stories when I was in Trade Roof, right? But as a startup, it was all about the hustle, right? Then after that, I joined Innovation Associates, right, for about four years plus, right, 2006 to 2009. They are one of the largest locally owned professional services company, right? So focus a lot on SAP. They did a lot of large scale projects in Malaysia, right? And as a 28-year-old, I was with them, and I was got promoted all the way until a senior manager, right? So I was overseeing some areas. And in 2009, which was about 12 years ago, I moved back to EY, right? So close to about 10 years after I left EY, I was back in EY. And currently I'm doing work in consulting, focus a lot into the digital and the risk areas. So that's me, and that's my quick story about my career path, right? But what I wanted to highlight was as all this career path and work was going on, right? Life kept popping up, okay? So we had 2 babies when I was in Innovation Associates, and I'll tell you a quick story later on why when the second baby came, right, and she was very young, I decided to make a career move, right, into EY and some of the struggles we went through. So the point here is that, life and work doesn't wait for each other, right? Sometimes you get loud work and you get loud life. And sometimes you get busy on both. So how do you manage that, right? And what are you going to do, right? There's a lot of stress coming up. But more importantly, right, I felt like, number one, right, there's always a struggle between, a matter of principle or does principles really matter or not, right? And why I want to differentiate here, especially with a lot of us, right? Sometimes we say that, as a matter of principle, I want to go to the gym every day and I want to make sure that I leave the office by 6 o'clock, right? I want to make sure that, I spend time with my family, or that's a matter of principle, right? But I'm here to share with you some of the struggles I had that were really principle matters when I was doing work. So you see, I highlighted the box there, right, on the left when I was in Trade Roof. And, we were a small startup. So I did everything from install the doorbell in the office to fixing computers to going for all the presentations and preparing the proposals and the costing. And like our name sounded, we are willing to trade anything under the roof just to make sure that we are profitable and we can make money, right? And it was sometimes quite tough. We didn't get our salary on time because cash flow was a problem, right? But that's the startup life, right? You hustle, you find anywhere or any way to make money, right? You try, right? So projects were hard to come by. A lot of time and effort was spent on looking for funding. So I used to go to the banks, also my boss asked for loans and all that, and it was tough. But it was a learning experience that time, and I guess that was the good part. But then some of the bad parts started to seep in, right? We were a cheap alternative for a lot of large companies, right? So they wanted to take us as users and use our resources, and we were more than willing, right? Because we were looking for projects, right? So then I remember incidents of me, in the office at 1, 2 a.m., right? And then deals were being cut at the highest level, right? And then they used to call me, right? Okay, Yeow, we set up the deal already. You just now include some of the line items inside there and you add this additional cost. Later, instruct you where to put the cost. and where to take the money out. And these kind of things slowly seep in, right? And you are there at 2 a.m. The proposal is due the next day. The pricing has to be submitted. So you have to, find out, put the cost in. You don't put the cost, the next day they're going to scold you. How can you not put the cost in? We told you to put the cost already, right? So yeah, that was my life. I knew at the back of it that money was meant for the wrong reasons, right? I knew, hey, doesn't sound like it's the right thing that we should do, right? I always knew that, right? So at the time, really, what was my principle, right? And what was my level of influence, right? I always justified it to myself also, very wrongly, right? I justified to myself that, I'm not the decision maker. I can't decide, right? So if the company has decided to do such things, then I'm just the one that is executing, right? And it became the norm to a certain extent, right? Until we moved on and we said, okay, we can now be bigger, right? And then we went into acquiring companies, and one of the companies we acquired was a gambling and entertainment software company. And then they put me in charge, right, to develop the software and develop the capabilities further to the next level. So I spent a few weeks on Star Cruise, right, implementing the gambling software, implementing the entertainment system on the ship, do all the proper and the enhancements that need to be done. But again, the principles start to come in again, right? And I was thinking to myself, I'm uncomfortable. Why is this the right work that I should be putting my effort and time into, right? Building up capabilities for gambling software and all that. And then I started to look around, right? And I see, hey, somehow nobody in this company has a family or a life around their family, because we started from this startup environment. We had breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper together in the company all the time, every day, right? Saturdays and Sundays also sometimes, right? And we were always, a very so-called a tight group, right? And as we grew, that culture of just continuously engaging with one another, right? So-called going to work, right? Planning activities together, working together, just churning proposals and all that became such a norm, right? And I thought that, hey, that's the norm, right? But then I look around and I think, hey, but that's not how my dad used to be in the family. That's not how I see my other friends, right, have a family, right? So I was very confused, right? Like, actually, what is the right what's the right method, what's the right principle, right, to move forward, right? And so I guess towards the end, God sort of really helped me out. I moved from Trade Roof to this company called Innovation Associates, as I mentioned earlier. And that really opened my partners, and two of them are Bumi partners, right? J. Halim and Dr. Hamza, right? And they are very well respected, very capable, very hardworking Bumi guys, right? And they have high integrity, right? You expect them to be a fully Bumi company, that they will take full advantage of being a fully Bumi company and be involved with whatever it takes to win these large projects, right? But they never did, right? And I remember one of the lessons I learned from somewhere was that when I went to interview them, I asked them directly, like, are you all involved in bribery and corruption? Right? And they didn't look offended or shocked, right? They said, no, everything in this company is above board. Okay, we don't indulge in that, we don't do any of that. But what did I learn when I joined them was, because you don't take these shortcuts of what we used to call whistling money and include these things here and there, you have to work a bit more, right? You have to prove that you are capable, right? You have to prove that you have the right experience to carry this through. And you have to have the courage to say, no, we don't do this. Right? And I learned it from them, right? I see the effort they put in, the extra thinking that they had to do, the extra work they had to do, right? To really be able to live to that principle, right? That they're not going to take the shortcut and do the wrong things, but they will take the high road, good projects. They will say no to powerful people, because that is the right principle, right? And to them, that principle mattered. So to me, I realized, hey, that 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 is the working model out here in Malaysia, right? You always hear these things that it doesn't work. Everybody is corrupted, and nothing, you can't get around without doing greasing the wheels and all that. But from innovation, I really learned and saw that it is possible, but you have to prove that you can do it. You have to put in that additional effort, lah, right? But you don't complain, lah, because you've decided not to be part of another system, right? And you have decided to be on this principle that you want to go ahead with. The other thing also I learned from them is they all had families, they all had children, right? Although they had to work hard, they had to put in the extra effort. They didn't complain that it was unfair when another company won the project and all that. And yet, they spend time with their children. There are times that they had to take calls with their family and all that. There are times they had to say no, we can't come into the office because we got a dinner to attend and all that. But it was okay because the rest of us knew that they were doing what was best for the company and for the best for their family as well, right? And we also were encouraged that, hey, sometimes it's not always only work, right? It's also about taking care of those that care for you and your family. Okay, so that was some of the key things that I learned, right? And as part of me moving forward from there, right? And then came the next move. So there was a high point in my life. Wow, we just won a multi-million dollar project with Innovation Associate, right? We had this long-term 3-year plan, right? We were building this core banking system, and wow, we closed our first deal with SAP, right? And I was so happy. I was part of the whole pursuit team. I helped to pull everything together from nothing, right? Wow, we closed 7-8 million ringgit multi-year contract. Will be good. Then another big contract came about, and I thought, okay, let's go for it, lah, right? I think we know what to do and all that. And it was so bad, we lost so badly, and it was so embarrassing. I remember I went for the presentation, and the client also looked at, I don't think you all know what you're talking about, right? And then I realized I actually don't know what I don't know, right? And there's a lot of darkness around me, right? That sometimes when you are only exposed to certain things, or when you are stretched to that limit, then you think that is the limit, lah, right? And so I lost very badly. And then I started to ask, so who won and why did they win and all that? And I didn't know why they won. Then the winning party, somebody in the winning party was calling around because they won, so they needed a lot of people to start that project. So they asked me, hey, why don't you join us? And that time we had a newborn baby. Kristen was born. And I said, never mind, let's go for it, right? Let's go and see. Because I had this darkness in it. I didn't know whether I could really function or perform at that level, right? And I didn't know what I didn't know. So we went for it. Uh, and it was bad. It was really I think you can ask Rachael, right? The first few months I was from the environment in innovation that wow, I was the center of knowledge, right? Anything you want to know, everything you know, you go and ask Yeow, right? Because he's the one that pulled it together, he's the one that done everything. And when I went into EY, the first few months, they didn't even let me attend meetings in case you say the wrong thing. And sorry, who are you again? You don't know anything, right? So please don't speak, right? Don't talk. And yeah, it was a big reality check, right, for me that maybe I'm not that good after all, lah, right? It's been a few years. I thought that I could function at that level, but I'm not, lah, right? So I remember I came back early, right? She's like, oh, okay, you're back early, good, we can makan together, all that. But you can feel the the deep sadness that I'm nowhere near there, and it's not going to work out. And then at that point, right, and innovation won another project, right? And then so they called me and said, hey, how are you doing there? Why don't you come back, right? We need you here, right? And this thing has happened, that thing has happened, right? And now this whole area of this consulting practice we split up. Why don't you come back and you run our whole consulting practice, right? And it's such a big opportunity for you. And though it was very tempting, right? And I was desperate to get out from my environment, right? But because I still felt that I needed to grow, right? And they taught me that you really need to be, really know your stuff and really be competent. So I said, no, never mind, I'll stay lah. I'll stay on, right? And see how much more I can achieve here lah. Set out to do something. Let's see how far this could go. Right? So it was tough times, but I continued on for a while more. And the bad news is it got even worse lah. So came 2011, like 2 years in, the project wasn't doing very well. So we were doing, even with EY there, right, we were doing worse and worse. And then finally there was a big issue in our Singapore office on this project. And I was based over here in Malaysia. I was doing another project already, and not my issue lah, not my problem really, right? But then the partners came and said, we need you to relocate lah to Singapore, right? For at least a year. Maybe you try out first lah, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, right? Manage your family at time and all that. And lo and behold, baby number 3 was on the way, right? So how? You go to Singapore, you help the project and the firm, or you stay at home and you help the family, right? Because there's baby number 3 on the way, right? And that's why I learned the value of really having teams, right? And teams at work and teams at home as well. So as Rachael mentioned, my mother-in-law has been superb for us, right? She has taken care of the kids when we're not there. And because we have this team at home, I could travel, but it was very sad, it was very painful. I know every Sunday night, I would stretch it as long as I could. I would take the first flight out on Monday morning at 5 a.m. and then rush into the office there to get there before 9 or before 9:30 and then rush for the meeting. And then my teams over in Singapore also help to cover for whatever you could do. Sometimes you can come back on Thursday, then I will try to come back on Thursday, right? If not Friday, the last day that I will come back. Client wasn't very happy, right? But our team in Singapore then really helped me out, right? So never mind, on Friday he will be there, right? Don't disturb KL, right? He has to go back. So we managed to get through that project. I think an important point is we started that project at 4 million ringgit, right? By the time we ended, it was close to about 22 million ringgit project for us. So the client was so happy with us. They just continued to give us more and more and the next phase and all that, right, to make sure that we got it through, right? And that has always been a career highlight. So because it was not so much of the goal of the revenue, but it was more that team that we had 10 years ago, we're still together as friends in Singapore and in work, and also my family, right, managed to get through that really difficult period, right, because we stuck together as a team, right? Poor Rachael, with a job and with two small children and a baby on the way, right, was very, very tough for us. But we managed to go through. I think I understood my own responsibility and I understood my own accountability, but collectively, everybody came together and took that responsibility together to complete what needed to be done at work as well as at home. Okay? So that's where I wanted to sort of end, right? That work and life will never be balanced. There'll be peaks, there'll be situations, there'll be dramas, there'll be conflicts and all that. But sometimes if you focus more on the purpose and calling, right, then, right, you will have the focus and the push to help you through, right? And what you need really at that point of time is, and I'm always reminded of the Bible story of Noah, when he focused, if he was focused on work, he would think that he was only building a boat, right? But if he was focused on his purpose and calling, which he didn't know for many, many years, right? I'm pretty sure. Actually, at the end, he had the chance to save all mankind and all the land animals, right? So what did he learn, right? And what I learned also, keep to his principles, right? He had to stay holy, right? Everything around him was corrupt, but he had to stay holy and stay the course, right? He had to learn new skills and capability because before that, nobody had to build a boat before. And he had to build the giant ark, right? So how, right? And that's where you got to learn new capabilities, new skills all the time so that you're a lot more effective and you're a lot more efficient in what you do every day, whether at home or at work, right? And then most importantly, he teamed with his family, right? And that's my point also. You really got to find teams at work, teams at family to help you. You have to build that buffer, right? Because and the need for that community. Because when you are in need, you know that there are people who care and there's people who go beyond their responsibility to make sure that you are okay. Yep. So that's my key messages, my key sharing